Hey everyone, it's Kong again with, I guess, kind of a sequel to my popular but ancient video about Matthew. One nice thing about waiting so long to make this video is that we now know everything there is to know about Almeda. She has her unique equipment, she has her center casting passive, and now she has her SP class. With all of this information available to us, let's take an in-depth look at where she stands as a unit. This is Should You Almeda. Almeda is arguably the main character and second protagonist of Langrisser Mobile. She's a descendant of light from Kal'Zath, which, although it's never specified in the game or in her bio, most likely makes her a descendant of Luna, Narm and Lance, Cherie, and Claret. When Claret regained control of Kal'Zath after Langrisser 5, she gave up the throne and turned the kingdom over to the people, which is why someone like Almeda would now be living as a commoner. As a descendant of light, Almeda is able to wield Langrisser, which she does through most of Langrisser Mobile's 3 story arcs. Almeda is one of the few characters who can upgrade her rarity, eventually becoming SSR at 6 stars. It's well worth putting in the effort to clear the Act 1 story and time rifts up to Part 11 Elite to get her fully upgraded. For her factions, she's a member of Protagonists, buffed by Matthew and Emperor Lavina, Legion of Glory, buffed by Ledin, Elwyn, and Grenier, and Mythical Realm, buffed by Gizaroth, the Sage of the Trees, and Isolde. As a mostly healer, she doesn't necessarily need a faction buff as much as your DPS units do, but it does help her healing output, and it does help for those times when you're going to be using her to contribute some damage. Unlike Matthew, she does not have a faction buff of her own, so she is a little more reliant on the other members of her team in that regard. For her bonds, Almeda currently helps 3 other SSR units unlock their bonds. She unlocks the defensive bonds for Sissy White and Shelfaniel, and the attack bond for Illustrial. For her own bonds, since she doesn't have Gates of Fate of her own, she needs to help 2 other free characters in their own bond stages. Chris's 3rd stage unlocks Almeda's defensive bond, and Cherie's 7th stage unlocks Almeda's attack bond. Hopefully you didn't miss out on the free Cherie. Okay, with all that said by way of introduction, let's take a look at her talent and skills, and then compare them with her SP class. In her original form, her talent inflicts 1 debuff on up to 4 enemy units within 4 spaces, and heals the ally with the lowest HP for 2.5 times her int after she acts. She's generally run in her Martyr class, which has better hit points, int, and defense than her Oracle class. All of her base classes are Holy type. She has an unimpressive spread of soldier bonuses in both of her base Holy classes, with only 20% HP, 10% attack, 30% defense, and 35% magic defense. The Heart Bond bonuses for her Martyr class are that she has a 10% less chance of being critically hit when she's above 80% HP, and that she always deals plus 10% AoE damage. We'll talk about skills in a moment, but for now, for the sake of comparison, let's bring in the changes to her base kit in her SP class. Her SP talent inflicts 2 random debuffs on the 2 enemy units closest to her, and heals the ally with the lowest HP for 3 times her int, while also dispelling 2 debuffs. So you can see this is a nice improvement to her healing output, also giving her some built-in debuff mitigation. It increases the number of debuffs to each target, but reduces the number of targets, so her debuffing isn't as spread out. Still, the debuffs aren't limited to her immediate area, they're now map-wide, so this does give her some flexibility. As expected, her SP stats are significantly better tuned, with more HP, more int, more magic defense, and more skill, functionally the same defense. This all comes at the cost of significantly reducing her useless attack stat, so that's fine. Her soldier bonuses are also a bit more appropriately tuned, with an additional 5% boost to hit points, attack, and defense at the cost of 10% magic defense. Good trade there as well. Finally, her Heart Bonds unconditionally decrease her AoE damage taken by 10%, and increase her damage dealt to debuffed enemies by 10%. These bond effects synergize a bit better with her role as a reactive healer/debuffer. So now let's talk about her skills. In her base form, she has access to the normal single target heal that can be cast every turn, as well as mass heal. She also has 3 2-cost AoEs, Tornado, Holy Dragon Breath, and her unique skill, Ultimate Quip, which is a weak debuffer. Her 3-cost skill is Roast, which heals all allies within 4 spaces of her by 3 times her int, and gives them a buff that lets them independently trigger a mini version of the debuff aspect of her talent. So every time one of those affected allies acts, they cause 1 debuff to 2 enemies within 4 spaces. One of the problems with this, though, is that they're all drawing from the same, relatively small debuff pool, so there comes a point where you're basically not going to be rolling new debuffs on those enemies if you're trying to swap them. The passive skill she gains from her center casting pattern is called Just a Taste. It increases her base int by a further 5%, and randomly reduces Ultimate Quip and Roast cooldowns by 1 to 4 turns when you cast them. This is nice because the 5-turn cooldowns on those skills are ridiculous for what they actually do. Her SP class, of course, adds 2 new skills to the mix. Her new 2-cost skill is a 3-range, 3-span assist that heals the targets for 3 times her int, and grants them 2 stacks of a new buff that not only makes them immune to incoming debuffs, but reflects them back at the caster. These stacks get used up as they're triggered, and they can only be stacked up to a max of 3, but the skill only has a 2-turn cooldown, so she can try to keep the team topped up. Still, if you're up against an AoE rush team with follow-up, Almeda is just one woman, there's only so much she can do. Her new 1-cost skill is a funny little support that lets her choose one of 3 sub-skills. Whichever one you choose, using this skill also reduces the cooldown of all of her support skills by 1, which can help cycle her heals uptime. The first sub-skill is an Anarchy. It increases her healing output by 50% this turn and causes the auto-healing aspect of her talent to proc twice. The second sub-skill is Luciris. You cast this on an ally within 3 spaces, and it gives them a 2-turn buff that lets them inflict 2 random debuffs before attacking. Pretty simple. The third sub-skill is Bozel. This causes 0.2 times AoE damage to a single target within 3 spaces, and inflicts a powerful debuff. The other sub-skills don't have cooldown timers, but the CD on this one is 3 turns. You might be asking what single target AoE damage is. That's basically how the game codes skills it wants you to be able to cast on a single unit without worrying about it being guarded like a normal single target attack, or immunized like fixed damage. For soldiers, she has a few options. She can use Forest Priests to help increase her debuff removal. She can use Fighting Monks for a healing boost if you think she's also going to need to attack stuff. These guys are better at attacking than Forest Priests. She can also use the new Windbloom Chanters for the same healing boost and the ability to refresh ally cooldowns. These are a better option than Monks if you're not going to need that extra oomph in your soldier's attack power, because it can help speed up her allies' attack skills, which is definitely a nice side effect. She also does have access to Sky Archers, which are a niche tech if you need to make her fly for some reason. Her SP class adds the ability to use Shrine Maidens, which are a nice anti-assassination option. Okay, now let's talk about her gear. Like most heroes, she has a few options here. She can benefit from either Full Moon or Crystal. Crystal is the safest option for a pure healer build because it increases her sheer healing output. Full Moon also increases healing output via increased int, but it also increases bulk. The drawback is that these are both conditional based on her HP being above 80%, which, if you're trying to heal up after eating a big AoE, is certainly not likely to be the case. Her unique equipment is... When you deal damage to enemies, it adds a debuff that reduces their mobility by 1 and prevents them from using guard skills. The in-game description says this works, quote, after attacking and dealing damage, but it does indeed work with her AoE skills. The The problem is, this is a one-turn dispellable debuff, so it's very hard to make it stick long enough to use it to your tactical advantage. The enemy can usually just cleanse it, or else end their unit's turn and then the debuff's not there anymore. For this reason, I generally prefer Nightbloom on her, which also boosts int, but helps with debuff mitigation as well. You can go with the classic Tenyo's Robe, but another option is the newer and poorly translated Ritual of Confusion. This does not give her the plus 10% HP, but it does mitigate incoming AoE damage, which can hopefully help her survive an onslaught long enough to get your team back up to health. For headgear, again, the all-time classic is the Tenyo's Headdress, with its capability of providing some great RNG buffs. If you're playing tank push, you might prefer the electric headwear for its anti-displacement capabilities. Now that she's a mage, using Holy Troops makes her mixed forces, so she can technically use Glory of the World as well, to heal a bit before battle, and revive if you're killed by fixed damage. This is kind of overkill if you're using a Swordsmith medal though. I tend to like the Swordsmith medal for the overall stat boosts and the nice immunities, but you may want to go with something like the New Cross for its plus healing, or even Holy Ring. Okay, so that's her full kit. Now how does she use it? She typically gets deployed for two things. First, as a cheap healer option for new accounts who haven't summoned one of the SSR healers yet. Her post-action healing can be useful for helping units who are far away, but her overall healing capability is fairly easy to overwhelm, and new accounts won't be able to use any of her SP-specific stuff. In general, for normal run-of-the-mill PvE things, you're going to want to look at Tiaris, Liana, or Rosenseal. Second, as a bulk debuffer, she's nowhere near as capable of sheer debilitating output as Bozal, or the many other Bozals, but she is free. For PvP, she'll be most appealing with her new SP kit as a kind of backup plan mini Rosenseal for when big Rosenseal is banned. She's still very uncommon in boxes in China, and when she does show up, she doesn't have the greatest track record. Rosen can simply pile up more stacks, and her crystal skills give reactive healing after taking AoE damage, which Almeda can't do. So for the PvP side, if you're looking for an alternative, Elma would definitely be a better option. Another good reason to have Almeda around is because she's quite a common unit for various special event challenges that pop up every month. When you use bonus characters to clear these event battles, you get even more exchange items or points, which saves you stamina in the long run. So, it's finally time for the final word. Finally. Look, I don't need to tell you whether you should summon Almeda, since she's free from the start of the game. You can't even miss her like some limited time event rewards. But, do I think you should get her SP upgrade? Sure, if you have the crystals to spare. At the time of this video, we're in the middle of a hot and heavy summoning season, so crystals might be harder to come by, or better spent elsewhere. But SP lottos do pop up every single month, so in general it's not difficult to get her unlocked. Her SP class is pretty much a straight upgrade to her normal class, so there's no real reason not to upgrade her. She has better stats, better troop stats, and a faster and better healing skill than her clunky 3C can actually make her into a functional healer. The caveat is that SP access comes late enough into your account journey that you probably have a better true healer by then. This kind of makes her a toy for bored old endgame accounts, but that's fine. She's not fantastic, she's not awful, she's more of a just for fun unit. Anyway, I hope you found this overview helpful and or entertaining. I know it was a little more in-depth than a normal Should You Summon episode, but that's what you get for a full breakdown. If you did like the video, please consider subscribing, and I'll give my baby Doberman applesauce some extra head scratches just for you. Extra special thanks to our Langrisser tier channel members for generously choosing to support the channel directly. Shout out to SP Levitt, SP Kate Soon, SP Jared Portela, SP Jerome Meyer, SP Harambe, and SP Midland Guild. Thanks also to all of the non-Langrisser tier channel members. Your support means a lot to me as well. Thanks so much, everyone. Happy Langrissing.